This Is Your Life, episode number 6.
This is your life. Are you who you wanna be? This is your life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This Is Your Life. My name is Michael Hyatt, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership. My goal is to help you live with more passion, work with greater focus, and lead with extraordinary influence. Before we get started in this podcast, I've got just a few quick announcements. My new book, Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World, is still on schedule to be published on May the 22nd. I'm asking you not to pre-order it yet. I know that's a strange request coming from the author, but there really is a method to my madness, and it'll benefit you if you wait. We are putting together a big bonus package of 7 resources that are worth $375.98. And to get that special bonus offer, all you're going to have to do is buy the book. And I really can't tell you more yet because we're still putting together the landing page, and it's going to be ready very soon, here in the next several days. So once it's up, you can be sure that I'm going to give you explicit instructions on how to take advantage of this special pre-launch offer. So again, don't order the book yet. I'll give you more instructions soon. I promise the wait's going to be worth it. I want to also mention that I've got a listener feedback hotline that's live and it's active. So you can call 615-656-5001, 5001, and leave a message or a question. I'd love to hear from you. The system sends me an email with an audio file of your message just as soon as you hang up. So if you've got an idea for a podcast you'd like to see or a question about an upcoming episode, I'd love to hear from you. So you're welcome to email me, of course, at feedback@michaelhyatt.com, or again, call the listener feedback hotline at 615-656-5001. Okay, so let's dive into this show's topic. Last spring, Gail and I spent a few weeks in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and one day, we decided to visit the Royal Gorge, which is this narrow, extremely deep canyon on the Arkansas River near Canyon City, Colorado. It's only about 50 feet wide at the base, and it's a few hundred feet wide at the top, but it's 1,250 feet deep in places, about 380 meters, and it's 10 miles long. I mean, it's this magnificent, almost like a mini Grand Canyon. It's just extraordinary. And we went on this gondola that crossed over the gorge, and we were able to look down, and we took a ton of pictures. It was beautiful, really breathtaking. But it looks like this giant groove that had been etched into the earth. But scientists, as I was researching this, scientists estimate that 3 million years ago, as the Rocky Mountains began to form, that what is now the Arkansas River was just this small stream. But over time, this small stream grew, and it slowly began to cut a channel in the granite. And if my math is right, this small stream only had to wear away half an inch of granite every century to create this 1,250-foot gorge. But this example illustrates the power of incremental change over time, and that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. You know, most people underestimate this. They think they've got to take massive action to achieve anything significant. And I'm not opposed to massive action. I've used it myself in certain situations to achieve specific results. But it causes most people to give up before they ever start. It's not the only tool in your toolbox. Most people just think they can't make the investment. For example, I've got a friend who needs to lose 50 pounds, and it seems like it's an insurmountable task. He just can't seem to get started. Why? Because he thinks he's going to have to go into some kind of radical, unsustainable diet. Another example, I overheard a man at the coffee shop the other day complaining to his friend that he hasn't taken a family vacation in years. And when his friend asked why, he said, "We just don't have the money." Another example, one of the guys I mentor confessed that he had never read the Bible all the way through. And when I asked him why, he said, "Well, you mean other than the fact that it's almost 1,200 pages long?" Here's my premise for this podcast episode. It's this. You can make small daily investments that will soon lead to big results. And before I tell you how to do this, I want to give you 7 examples to get your creativity flowing. Okay, you ready? Example number 1, losing weight. I meet so many people that want to lose weight, and I meet a lot of other people that need to lose weight. But again, so many people think that it just seems like such a massive undertaking. They don't know how to get from where they are to where they want to be, so they just procrastinate. They never start. But listen to this. Last year, I lost about 15 pounds in 8 weeks, and I've kept it off. In fact, I've lost about 20 pounds now altogether. A friend of mine that I've known for 3 decades lost 120 pounds in 20 months. She went down several dress sizes. She's totally transformed her life. And because of losing all that weight, it became leverage for her to accomplish a lot of other things that she wanted to accomplish, including going back to college. But both of us lost our weight using this wonderful free iPhone application called Lose It. And I've got a link in the show notes for it, but it's an application that's fantastic. We didn't really do a lot other than record what we ate daily. A very small incremental change, but it began to shift everything. But by becoming aware of what we were eating, we started making healthier choices, and the healthier choices led to some other consequences. In her case, she started feeling like for once in her life, she could begin exercising. And she got involved in some classes at her local gym, some Zumba classes, and that began to take even more weight off. So again, an example of losing weight. Another example number 2, paying off debt. One of my friends paid off $15,000 in debt last year in less than a year. She didn't do anything radical. She simply set up a budget, took opportunities to make extra income, and cut back on gourmet coffee and other non-essentials. She used Dave Ramsey's debt snowball to pay off her smallest debts first, then the larger ones. So many people think that they're so far underwater that they just don't deal with it. They set their finances aside. They refuse to discuss these issues with their spouse. They just don't deal with their reality because they're unaware of the fact that if they made simple, small, incremental changes, they could change everything. Example 3, improving profitability. In a publishing company I used to run when I was at Thomas Nelson Publishers, this was 10 years ago or so, we decided to improve our margins in that division by 2% over 1 year. So we chunked it down to 0.5% per quarter. And then we focused on targeted price increases and on expense control, and it dropped over $1 million to the bottom line that year. Now you think, gosh, 2% is not that significant, but in that business, because of the volume, 2% was hugely significant. To make another $1 million in profit was a great big win for our division and really helped me get a promotion and move to greater levels of responsibility. But it wasn't done by taking massive action. It was done by getting really clear on the goal and then making incremental improvements over time. 4th example, writing a book. I've used my blog to write several books. I mapped out the book and then I wrote it basically in 500 to 750 word posts, one at a time. And using this method, you can write a 50,000 word book in about 100 days. And at my pace of about 5 posts a week, it takes just 20 weeks. I mean, that sounds doable. It certainly sounds a lot more doable than writing an entire manuscript. I mean, that's almost frightening. I know it scared me to death when I got my first book contract. I thought, how am I going to do that? But this is like so many things. The way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And that's really the secret of incremental change over time. And that's also the secret that many authors have used to get a book written and to accomplish something that they felt like was insurmountable to accomplish. One of the great things also about blogging a book is that you get great feedback along the way. I know countless authors that have done this, and some literary agents and some publishing houses poo-poo this, but I'm going to tell you, it can work. It doesn't work in every case, but it can work. Another example number 5, running long distances. When I started running, I could barely walk a mile. Then I discovered a man by the name of Jeff Galloway. Basically, he's a running coach, and you can find his blog at jeffgalloway.com. I've got a link in the show notes. But I started running for 1 minute, and then I would walk for 2 minutes. I would run for 1 minute and then walk for 2 minutes. And I just repeated that pattern. Gradually, I increased my distance and the time I was running. And in less than a year, I was able to run my first half marathon. And it was awesome to experience that. It changed a number of things in my life. And because of that, I recruited other people into running. We had one person at our company, one lady who lost like 60 pounds just in terms of getting prepared for the half marathon in Nashville where I live. But she didn't do it by, going out and running 5 miles the first time she ever ran. She began by walking. And then she used Jeff Galloway's method to run and to walk and to run and to walk. And that got her to the place where she could run the distances required in the half marathon. Changed her life, but just a little bit at a time. Incremental improvements each week. Example number 6. And I'm intentionally, by the way, trying to get these from a lot of different areas of life, just to open up for you the possibilities of how you can apply this principle. But example number 6, reading the Bible. Look, the Bible is a big book, no doubt. But get this, in less than 15 minutes a day, you can read the entire Bible through in a year. I've done it numerous times. Currently, I'm reading through the New King James Version Daily Bible, the NKJV Daily Bible, published by, who else? Thomas Nelson. But I've also included a link in the show notes to an online plan that will also enable you to read through the Bible in a year. And the truth is, there's a ton of plans out there. There's a Bible version that you can download onto your iPhone or your iPad called YouVersion. Logos also has a version. There's a bunch of them, and I'll include the links in the show notes. But again, this doesn't take you, sitting down and plowing through the Bible for several hours a day. No, you can do it incrementally. The great thing I like about the NKJV Daily Bible and also the Tyndale one-year Bible programs is that you read a little bit in one part of the Bible, a little bit in another part of the Bible, and a little bit in another part of the Bible. In fact, right now, the Bible plan that I use in the NKJV Daily Bible has a portion from the Old Testament, a portion from the Psalms, a portion from Proverbs, and a portion from the New Testament. The great thing about that is I don't hit these long patches where I'm bored. I mean, I hate to admit it, but when you're trying to read through Leviticus, it's pretty tough to glean something that's going to be inspiring. There's just a lot of tough sledding. And maybe there's some people out there that can really glean something from it, but it's not me. I need some variety and I need to break it up a little bit. And that's the thing I love about the New King James Version Daily Bible and the one-year Bible that Tyndale publishes is that it gives you variety and gives you a chance to glean from several parts of Scripture so that you have that sense that you're getting something out of it and you can keep moving. But what a satisfying feeling to come to the end of the year and to see that you've read through the entire Bible in a year. Example number 7, little small thing, like saving your marriage. I had another friend in a really bad marriage, and on the advice of his mentor, which happened to be me, he started practicing a concept called 5 for 5. And this is a concept that I first learned from Reggie Campbell, who has a book called Mentor Like Jesus. Yeah, that's it. Mentor Like Jesus. There's a link in the show notes. He also has a website called Radical Mentoring. But he has this concept that he advocates, and we've used in my mentoring group, where you simply walk in the house after work, move within 5 feet of your spouse, and then ask him or her about their day and listen without interrupting for 5 minutes. 5 for 5. It's a small start, but for this particular individual that I'm talking about, it has now grown to 30 minutes a day. And their relationship, it's not perfect. They still got a long ways to go, but it's reversed course. And it really has. I don't think it's too large a thing to say that it's saved their marriage. It really has. So those are just some examples. And you got to think about your own issues, things, maybe goals, dreams that you've wanted to accomplish. You can't quite get around to taking massive action. Maybe you don't need to take massive action, but you could benefit from taking small steps, baby steps, and harnessing the power of incremental change. So now what I'd like to do is to transition into how you can do this. And I'm going to suggest that you take 5 steps. And this is congruent with what I've said in my last several podcasts. Some of this may seem redundant, but I don't know about you, but I need to hear this stuff all the time. I need constant inspiration because I'm out to accomplish big things. And my guess is if you're listening to this podcast, you'd like to accomplish some dreams, you'd like to accomplish some goals, and you're out to make a dent in the universe. I am too. So again, here are 5 steps in the interest of equipping you to harness the power of incremental change. Step number 1, identify a goal. Now, I'm not going to suggest that you do this on every goal, but I'm going to suggest that you identify a goal. Maybe it's something like I've suggested in my examples, the 7 examples, but something where you're willing to say, yes, I think this could work for this particular goal. So just identify a goal. Okay, good. Do you have something in mind? Great. Okay. Step number 2, make sure the goal is SMART. Now, SMART's an acronym, and it can mean a lot of different things. I've heard many variations of this, but here's how I'm using the acronym SMART when it comes to goal setting. First of all, be specific. That's the S. Your goal should identify exactly what you want to accomplish in as much specificity as you can muster. Okay, so be specific. You know, you're not looking at some general goal like, gosh, I'd like to be in better shape, or I'd like to have a better marriage. You want more specificity than that, okay? Second attribute of a SMART goal, this is the M, measurable. As the old adage says, you can't manage what you don't measure. So when you begin to make a goal measurable, you want to be in a position where you know whether or not you accomplished it. So for example, if I had a goal that was to lose 15 pounds by December the 31st, 2013, I mean, I'm just making up this at random, that's measurable. I know that when I get to December the 31st, 2013, either I've accomplished the goal or I've not accomplished the goal because it's measurable. Another example, reduce my debt by $10,000 by March the 31st, 2013. Okay, again, that's measurable. You measure where you're at right now, and either by March the 31st, 2013, you've either reduced your debt by $10,000 or you haven't. So it's measurable. Okay, the third attribute of a SMART goal is that it's actionable. That's the A in SMART. Every resolution, every goal you make should start with the verb, like quit or run or finish or eliminate. It should start with a verb. And that's just something I've learned through the years. It comes second nature now when I'm setting goals, but start with the verb. That makes it actionable. In other words, it's not a state of being. It's something you can do to move toward this goal or towards this dream that you want to accomplish. The fourth attribute in a SMART goal is that it's got to be realistic. Now, be careful here, because realistic is one of those words, which I mentioned in a previous podcast, that I really don't like. Because if you're not careful, you can try to make a goal realistic and really not stretch yourself so that you're just staying inside your comfort zone. And as someone has wisely said, the solution to your current problem or the answer to your current problem is outside of your comfort zone. You're not going to get anything different in life unless you're willing to stretch outside of your comfort zone. So you've got to be careful when you talk about it being realistic. But a good goal should stretch you, but you've got to use a dose of common sense. I mean, an unrealistic goal for me would be to say something like, I want to be on the seniors golf tour, or I want to play at the NBA level of basketball. These are not things that are realistic for me, given my current circumstances and what I've been given, frankly, by my Creator. So you got to be realistic. Fifth attribute and final attribute of a SMART goal is that it's time bound. Every goal needs a date associated with it. And when you're going to plan to deliver on that goal, it could be by year end, December the 31st, or it could be a more near term, like June the 30th. Regardless, it needs to be time bound. And I said in a previous podcast, if you don't hit that deadline, what's the consequence? Usually, it's nothing. You just recalibrate, reset the goal, and keep moving. But it's extremely effective, extremely important to have a goal because it keeps you moving and creates a sense of urgency. So make sure your goal is SMART. Step number 3, identify your incremental change. In other words, what's the practice, the one practice you're willing to adopt that over time will move you toward your goal? This is critically important. We're not talking about cobbling together some complex action plan. Those have their place, but not here. We're talking about the awesome power of incremental change. So you've got to identify one practice. Maybe it's something like I suggested previously, that you're going to just practice the 5 for 5 rule in terms of getting 5 minutes within 5 feet of your spouse once a day when you come home from work. Or maybe it's going to be just recording what you eat in an application like Lose It. Or maybe you're going to blog a book by writing a blog post every day, or maybe it's 2 a week. It doesn't matter. That's going to be particular to your circumstances. But what's the one practice that you're going to adopt, that you're willing to adopt, that over time is going to move you towards your goal? That's step number 3. Step number 4, track your progress. There are a lot of ways to track your progress. It might simply be on your calendar. For example, I've challenged the guys in my mentoring group, my mentees, to begin exercising at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes per session, and to note it on their calendar, because we're going to compare notes. They're growth partners. Every mentee is assigned a growth partner. They're supposed to get together between sessions, either by phone or in person. But I've asked them to hold one another accountable. But to do that, they need to mark it on their calendar. It might be in your journal. You know, if you carry a journal with you, it could be in that. There are a number of wonderful software applications on the internet that can help you keep track of these kinds of habits or practices. One of them that I used to use is called Joe's Goals, JOE''S Goals. And I've got a link in the show notes to that. Another one that's a little more sophisticated, that's more recent, is one called I Run, You Run, and that's spelled IRUNURUN.com. Again, a link in the show notes. And there's another one that I really haven't gotten into much, but it looks very, very interesting. And I played around with it for probably about an hour, but it's called LifeTick.com. Probably better for action plans rather than habits, but that's another tool that you might want to play around with as well. So step number 4 is just to track your progress. Step 5 is recruit a growth partner or an accountability partner. This is a lot easier to practice these incremental steps or these incremental changes if you've got somebody that's doing it with you. For example, when I tried or set out to lose some weight, I recruited Gail, my wife, and we began doing this together. In fact, I actually started doing this to support her because it was something she wanted to do. And so I began recording my results with her, and it was really a lot of fun. I mean, we really got into it. And so sometimes we would go out to a restaurant, we'd eat a recipe that wasn't in the Lose It database. And so one of us would enter it into Lose It, and then we would share that recipe with one another. So it was half the work. So it was just a lot of fun to do it together, and we began to see the progress in one another as we did this together. So recruit a growth partner, and that'll be particularly helpful when you fall down or when you slip up or when you're tempted just to give up and throw in the towel and say it's not worth it. I found that in these kinds of incremental change activities, that when I'm down, my partner's up. When they're down, I'm up. And so we can help one another so that we don't fall into a ditch and don't give up. So change may involve some massive action on your part, but more often than not, it's the small incremental changes consistently practiced over time that lead to the big results. So what I'd like to do here for just a couple of minutes, I've got 3 listener questions that I want to answer. John wrote in and he asked, how do you get yourself motivated to make the change in the first place? Well, great question. Great question. And I worked with people for a number of years trying to motivate them to change. And I've worked more importantly with myself, trying to motivate myself to change. You know, it's like you've got this area that you want to change in, but you're not sure where to start. Well, let me give you a couple questions that you can ask yourself that I think will help. And this involves fast forwarding to the future. So imagine you're playing a digital recorder, or maybe you're on your iPhone and you hit the fast forward button for your life, not for your music, but for your life. Ask yourself this question: what will happen if I don't make this change? You've got to see what's at stake What's going to happen if you don't make this change? If you don't address your marriage, if you don't address your diet and your weight, what happens if you don't make the change? So that's kind of the negative side of fast forwarding to the future. But there's also a positive side. What would be possible, or what could be possible, if you make the change? I mean, think about it. What if you had not just a barely tolerable marriage? What if you had a great marriage where you were passionate, where you reclaimed that love that you had initially when you got married? Or what would happen if you could drop 15, 20, 30, 50 pounds and could be in the best shape of your life? I can tell you right now, at 56 years old, I am in absolutely the best shape of my life. And it's made possible all kinds of things for me. And that's the question I've asked when I've set out to get in better shape, is what would it be possible if I could make this change? You've got to connect with what's at stake. That's the key thing. If you're going to get yourself motivated to make a change, just connect with your why. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. People lose their way when they lose their why. And conversely, people find their way when they connect with their why. Anita wrote in and asked, I've started many projects like this with the intent to keep going, but inevitably I lose steam and quit. I just don't seem to have much willpower. Is there any hope for me? Well, yes, absolutely. When I was a young boy, I remember my dad bought me this small pony. And I was so excited about it. We went out to one of my cousin's house where we were going to keep the horse because we didn't live on a farm. We lived in town, but he lived on a small ranch. And so he was going to keep the horse. And so we went out, I got on the pony, and guess what happened? You can guess, right? I fell off. Fortunately, it was in a freshly plowed field and I fell on soft earth and I wasn't hurt, but I kind of remember crying, and my dad came up, just encouraged me, and he said, son, look, you can do this. Get back on the horse. Well, the same thing happens when you fall off a habit or an incremental change. You got to be willing to start over. It's not a big deal. I can tell you almost in anything I set out to do, my consistency is the fact that I'm consistently starting over. Sometimes I go days without reading the Bible. I hate to admit that, but it's true. Does that mean I'm not going to read the Bible anymore? No. It means I get back on the pony and I start afresh. Or there may be a day when I get off my diet plan, or I'm traveling and I'm off my exercise plan. Does that mean I just throw up my hands and say I can't do this? No, it doesn't mean you don't have any willpower. It just means that, like every other human, you've got to begin again and restart the project. That's really what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, is the people who are consistent are willing to just keep starting over and to get back on when they fall off. Ben wrote in to say, this advice seems to be at odds with people like Tony Robbins, who encourage people to take massive action. I know you say it's not, but can you give me some examples? Well, yeah, Ben, just to reiterate, I think there are definitely times when massive action is required. I'm not opposed to it. In fact, I would say that this power of incremental change is not opposed to the concept of massive action. It's just like two tools in a toolbox. You got to know when to use each one. There are times when I need a hammer. There are times when I need a screwdriver, and I better know when to use each tool. For example, if you lose your job, you probably need to take massive action to find a new one. That's not something you need to, get on a 2-year plan and take incremental change and expect everything to work out. You're probably going to need massive action in that situation. If the doctor tells you you need to change your diet and get in shape to avoid a heart attack, you probably need to take massive action. If your spouse tells you they're going to leave you if you don't stop working all the time, you probably need to stop and take massive action. If you discover your son or daughter is on drugs, you probably need to take massive action. In short, you should consider employing massive action rather than incremental change whenever you're in a crisis and you want to avoid a looming negative consequence, or you want to create significant positive momentum. The problem is that you can't do this with too many goals at one time. In other words, you can't decide that you're going to tackle 8 major goals with massive action. I promise you, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be successful if you try to do that. I've tried to do that. I'm great for maybe a week, but then it doesn't happen. This is a case where slow and steady, or the tortoise, wins the race. The rabbit may look better initially in that 100-yard sprint, But once you start going to a 10K or a half marathon or a full marathon, slow and steady is what wins the race. Well, that's pretty much it for this episode of This Is Your Life. If you want to comment on this episode, please go to my blog at michaelhyatt.com. You can go right to this episode, and right below the show notes, there's plenty of room for you to comment. If you've enjoyed this podcast, let me encourage you to subscribe to it at michaelhyatt.com/This Is Your Life, all one word. This way, you're not going to miss a single episode. They'll each be delivered to your iPhone, especially if you use an application like Downcast. You can also find more resources on my blog at michaelhyatt.com. And if you're interested in me speaking at your event, or if you want to catch me at one of my live presentations, check out my speaking page at michaelhyatt.com/speaking. Until next time, remember, your life is a gift. Now go make it count.